Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2010, it's a Nissan Murano, and we're going to be changing the front brake pads and rotor. Okay, so this is an example of what kind of tools you're going to need for the front. You're going to need a 14mm socket to remove the bolt on the caliper. You're going to need possibly a 17mm wrench to hold the slide pin so it doesn't rotate, a pry bar to push the piston back in, something to clean up the hub itself, something to support the caliper while it's hanging, a screwdriver possibly to get the hardware kit off. And these bolts were extremely tight, so you're going to need a 1/2-inch drive ratchet and a breaker bar to break the bolts loose in the back. Of course, we're going to need some synthetic brake grease and, of course, our new rotor, which we have right here, and some lighting so we can see what's going on. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here like this with this pry bar, put it through here, and we're just going to push lightly against that piston to push it back into the bore. And once it pushes back in, we're just going to make sure that our slide pins slide back and forth. A little bit snug, but they do slide. Now I'm going to push that piston back in all the way over here. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to take the brake pad, put the brake pad against it, and just keep constant pressure on the brake pad to push it back into the bore. And that's it as far as it can go. Alright? Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here with a 14mm socket, such as this, to remove the caliper mounting bolts. Now sometimes when you try to remove these bolts here, this slide pin rotates. If that slide pin does rotate, then what you would do is you would just hold it with a 17mm wrench like that, so you can take out just this without this rotating. Possibly. We'll see how it goes. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out that bolt there. And there's also another one down underneath the bottom, underneath here as well. Now we're going to take that bracket off. We're going to bring it to the bench and we're going to replace the hardware kit, which is right here. And then we're going to change this rotor. We'll make sure that underneath here that this is all nice and clean underneath here, that there's no rust underneath there at all. And that's it. Alright, so sounds easy and it's really not that bad, so let's get started. Now, I'm going to try to do this so you can see what I'm doing, but I do need to get in there a little bit. So, let's see how it goes. We're going to take out that 14mm bolt here, right here. Now you can see that that slide pin is not rotating, so we don't need that 17mm wrench. Alright, we're going to take out the other one. We're not going to lose these because we need to reuse these. We're going to take our caliper off like this, take our hanger, and just lift it up, and bring it up out of the way, just like that, so it doesn't interfere with what we're working on. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take those bolts loose there. They're really tight. If you have an air gun, you can use an air gun, of course. If not, you're going to need a long pipe or a breaker bar or something like that to break it loose. And we will torque them back on when we get to that point. I'm just going to put this on the side for now. We're going to take the brake pads out. And we're going to change this hardware kit, but we'll do that on the bench in a minute. Now, I want to point this out to you. You see this one has got the washer on it? This one, the washer didn't come off with, it's stuck on there. So we're just going to make sure we put them back in the correct locations. Take our rotor off the car. And I'm going to need to clean this up in here, because if that's not spotless, we're going to wind up with a pulsating brake pedal. Okay, now I want to point this out to you. I did clean this rotor off with brake cleaner already. We face here, and it's facing the back over there as well. And I will clean it up later on to get the rest of the grease that you're going to see go on there. But for now, we're just putting it on like that. Now this rotor, you can see that this rotor moves around a little bit, so it makes it difficult putting the bracket on. I usually take a crown nut like this, put it over the top, and screw it on. See, by putting that nut on there, now it keeps the rotor on there, and it keeps it from moving around when you try to put that bracket onto the back right there. All right, now I'm going to show you this here, but then I'm going to do it over on the bench. You take off these clips, they come off just like this, and this is trash. Same thing here. And you see this rust inside here? Any rust that you see at all inside these areas right here, we're going to clean them up with either a file or emery cloth or sandpaper or something, whatever you have to do. All right, so I'm going to take this over to the bench right now. I'm going to run this off on the wire wheel, and once I do that, we'll come back and we'll put the hardware back on. Okay. So now once you have this cleaned up, you just take a little bit of the grease and you put it every place that that hardware kit is going to go. You put a little bit of grease on there. It'll make it slide a lot easier, and it'll also minimize the amount of rusting that takes place underneath these metal tabs. All right, and you just put it on just like this, push it in. Make sure that that is pushed down all the way inside here as well. Do the same thing with this one. And that's it. All right, now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to put a little bit of grease on here. Every place that the brake pad is going to touch, we put a little bit of grease. It doesn't have to be a significant amount, just a little bit. Now we're going to take out these slide pins right here and here, and we're going to make sure that they go back in the same location that they came out. I'm going to spray some brake cleaner on a rag and clean this off. Take a little bit of grease and put it on here. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. And you have to make sure it goes back in the same hole that it came out of. Right? Okay, we'll do the same thing on this one. Clean it off. Remember, there's brake cleaner on a rag. Just a tiny little bit on here like this. And then we'll put that one back in as well. Just like that. Okay. All right, now we'll put that mounting bracket back together. Okay. And now, being that the rotor is held on, we're just going to put the caliper mounting bracket up like this. Tighten it up. We're going to catch both of the bolts first before we tighten anything all the way. Now remember, this one, the washer, was on the lower one, so we just left it there, and then we'll take this and tighten it up. Now there is torque specs on these bolts. I will look it up and come back and torque it. But for now we're just going to snug this. And like I said, I will come back and torque that, but for now we're just going to continue. Now, remember the brake pads that you took off? This is the back pad. You can see the indentation here from where the piston was. So you have to make sure you put the correct one on the back where it belongs as well. This is very important. That needs to be on the top. This actually pushes the brake pad away from the rotor and it keeps it from constant contact. So we're just going to put that in. Like that. Same thing here. This goes up on top as well. Alright, now, next thing we're going to do is take our caliper down. And every place that the brake pad is going to touch, we're going to put the tiny little bit of silicone, just like this. Okay? Now we'll take our caliper, put it over the top like this, push that slide pin back in. Put the bottom slide pin in. Catch both of these bolts by hand before you tighten either one of them up. Alright, now we'll snug it down. Now if you're trying to tighten this and the slide pin is rotating, remember you're going to hold it with your wrench like that. That's not the case right now. So that's it. This comes off, of course. Let's talk about what we did. That's clean enough. Okay. Okay, so what we did is we cleaned off where the rotor is going to fit here on the bearing itself. It's nice and clean. We cleaned the face of the rotor with brake cleaner, which I am going to wipe down again. We put our mounting bracket back on. We tightened up the bolts back here and we torqued them down to the proper specs. We installed the hardware kit. We also replaced the, we lubricated the hardware kit where the brake pad is going to touch and where the kit fits into the mounting bracket, both top and bottom. We lubricated the slide pins. And we lubricated every place that the brake pad is going to touch, including the piston back in here. We tightened up that 14 millimeter there, and that's it, we're done. Okay, so that's it, you're pretty much all set. Remember, get in the vehicle, pump the brake pedal a couple of times, bring that pedal up to the top before you take it out for a road test, because the first time you step on it, your foot's going to go to the floor. Alright, so make sure you pump it up before you drive it. That's it. Alright, thanks for watching. As always, see you on the next one.